Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So this episode I'm calling Anti-Vax Truck Convoy Tests the Left and the Media's Fascist-BS Meter. So this the truck convoy that's currently being cracked down upon by Ottawa police in Canada has been portrayed in the media, and also by some who consider themselves to be on the left, or some who are, have better credentials on the left, as being kind of a workers' rebellion, or certainly a civil liberties issue, a personal choice issue. And also they've taken this truck convoy as a representation of either widespread sentiment or even widespread sentiment among Canadian truck drivers. And it only is in sort of more, let's say small pockets of the internet, or, various, news sources that are not broadcast or cable distributed, that those about 90% of Canadian truck drivers are vaccinated. And furthermore, as I will show, I will put the link in the description box, this truck convoy is not nearly as big as its organizers claimed it would be. And it contains maybe at the most a few hundred semis in it, and then many pickup trucks in it. And while those semis are still a formidable, group of machines, and that are, especially if they're fueled up and their batteries are running, they can create a lot of noise and they can block lots of streets. And they have been doing that for the last several weeks. And now today, some of that is being cleared away. There's some arrests happening, and unfortunately, Trudeau declared an emergency when it's been stated by other Canadians and people who understand Canadian law that he really didn't need to declare this emergency. Furthermore, his freezing of bank accounts seems to be somewhat extreme, and it's a precedent that me, as someone who supports protests and the rights of protesters, especially not only obviously protesters I agree with, but also even protesters I disagree with, that I support their rights to protest. But I think that there needs to be some some balance or other in understanding what is protest and what is then just simply sabotage or an insurgency. And this is where and even somewhat of a dangerous insurgency. So the cover story of this as being a spontaneous eruption of discontent among a wide swath of the Canadian population, and also among truckers, is just, it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. And then when you look even closer at the leaders of this, for instance, one of them, I think is named Pat King. He is a far-right character who talks about violence and talks about killing Justin Trudeau, and basically immediately swings to violent rhetoric, when he talks about his political ambitions or wishes for this convoy. And I believe he's been arrested today as well. So I'm not. So this convoy is in a way a test case for. This is why I'm calling it Test the Left's and the Media's Fascist-BS Meter. So I think this is an example of a group who is using power and privilege, a certain level of power and privilege that they have, because to have the resources to even have several hundred semis take 3 or 4 weeks just to devote those semis to protest immediately suggests that there is some pretty big money behind this. A semi is a several $100,000 either Canadian or American dollars investment, and that doesn't, you can't, if you're either a business, either you're an owner operator or a trucking business, you can't afford to have your semis sent to, a protest on a fairly trivial matter that has really almost no bearing on the functioning of your business. Okay, in other words, you can just as well be vaccinated or not be vaccinated in some ways, and still be able to drive a truck, especially if you're alone and you're not being unvaccinated, you're not interacting with people in an indoor environment or in your cab of your semi. So anyway, it's clearly not so there's the whole notion that this is a working class or blue collar movement is a phony scrim or veil over what is an extremist, in my opinion, and in the opinion of some Canadian commentators, and it appears also even the people of Ottawa, or people who, not the people of Ottawa, but many people in Ottawa and in other places where the convoy has been camped out, that anyway, that this convoy is more of an insurgency and more of an effort to sabotage the Canadian economy, or the U.S. and Canadian or North American economy, and also to create a political crisis and to test the political environment in Canada. And now I'm someone of the left. I'm someone who believes, I'm critical of Justin Trudeau and his government on a number of fronts, especially with regard to fossil fuel extraction and his handling and the handling of the Canadian police, of the First Nations, the not just First Nations, but activists plus First Nations who are resisting pipelines and also various extraction projects, fossil fuel extraction projects in Canada. Canada has an extractive economy similar to parts of the United States, and at least it's largely it's dependent on export, among other things, of various products that are, you could say, are extractive, or and certainly the fossil fuel economy is very strong in Canada, and so relative to the size of the population, and anyway, so but I'm someone who would welcome the use of power, of whatever power people have, to try to stop those projects. And I am not in principle against some of the actions that the convoy has undertaken, but it's in the service of a very bad cause, in the service of a cause that is that's destructive, and they've also been employing tactics that are destructive, and I think that it really creates a line of division among people, even on the left, and also just even in the center to some degree, about whether you support support people's civil liberties. On the other hand, when people push their powerful people or people with some power, and this relative to the number of people in this convoy, it is much more power than for instance, a protest of a similarly numbered protest of people who are on foot, who have a left ideology of some kind, who are not who just simply are demonstrating or even occupying a street or something like that. Partly because, and this is where the power in some way of this convoy comes. The power of the convoy comes from the agreement of the police. You see a video of basically Ontario police agreeing. Now today there has been a turn, and there have been more of a policing approach above the police to this convoy. But previously, there's video showing them basically fraternizing with the police, and the police fraternizing with them. And there's even a sense that they agree with the idea of anti-vax or anti-vax mandate. And this is something that is common also in the United States. There are police departments who have shown themselves, or police within the United States, various departments or various elements in various departments have shown themselves to be very resistant to some of the public health measures, including vaccination, including mask wearing, that are recommended by public health authorities. And so, and we see some similar attitudes in Canada. So now today there's been something of a change in that we see the police now, in a rather gentle manner, still arresting some of the leaders of this demonstration or protest or convoy, maybe is the best way to put it. And I think they are. So there's a couple different. It's a complex phenomenon, and there's not one right answer to it. But I think that this, starting from the beginning again, this is a far right demonstration using some very powerful and expensive equipment to do their demonstration, and also not being covered in the media truthfully. So their importance was magnified even greater, okay, partly because of the idea that they're the great swelling of popular working class people against the sort of effete elite in Ottawa or in the Liberal Party, and that they were therefore the salt of the earth, so to speak. And it was not well communicated. One had to dig in terms of that this was a small minority fraction of truckers. So they were their importance was magnified, and the notion that they were also this great movement was not really. It was only discovered. One had to dig to find out about that they were a small minority. And this is part of also, this is something, a theme of Politics 2100, that the far right has gotten, including this truck convoy, has gotten so much positive PR from media, okay, and that the media treats them with kid gloves, and it treats their idealized self-presentation rather than their reality. It doesn't confront their reality very quickly. So there's two elements. One is that the kid glove police treatment by the police in Canada, and also by the media internationally, created this sense that this was a model somehow of reviving or of continuing the anti-vax, anti-mask, anti-public health movement that has become identified with also the Republican Party in the United States, the Conservative Party in Canada, and to some parts of the Conservative Party in Canada, and which also fraternize with the protesters or the convoy members, and encourage them when they were in Ottawa. And so we see this pattern of a media that is unwilling to just communicate basic facts about the size of the convoy, their representative or not representative nature of who they are part of, so they could live in a way in a megalomaniacal bubble of feeling like they are so amazing and so powerful, and to feel enlarged by their preferred image was projected out more than their actual realistic image of their size, and the fact that they're mostly pickup trucks. Okay, I mean, you can find lots of right-wing people, and not just right-wing people. You can find people who own pickup trucks who would join a convoy pretty easily anywhere in the United States or Canada. So if they agree with whatever the issue is, so it's not really anything particularly specific to the trucking industry or logistics industry. But there were some semis. There were a few hundred of them involved. Anyway, so this, and furthermore, also just talking about the economics of keeping a semi in a demonstration for weeks on end, and a convoy in weeks on end, and the fact that ordinary truckers couldn't afford to do that, and either as an employee, if they were an employee of a trucking company, either the boss would need to okay them taking the truck to this demonstration, so the owner of the multi-millionaire of that trucking company would need to say, go do that demonstration, or the probably also millionaire owner-operator of some, maybe not, obviously not as rich as the owner of a whole trucking company, but still the owner-operator of probably a paid-off big rig, in other words, one that they own outright, would have to be able to take several weeks off to do this demonstration, and also feel strongly about this issue, or feel strongly not about the issue. And this is where the anti-vax, anti-public health, movement is this favored way of this right wing. It attracts the right wing because they are paranoia, their tendency toward paranoia, and also the idea that a government could organize a cooperative effort that would be, to them, encircling of them, that somehow would be suffocating them by suggesting by basically having them get the vaccine that they got as children to go to school or whatever, a similar vaccine, not the same vaccine, but anyway, a vaccine like the one they had as children, just now as an adult, to get to combat this pandemic, and for them to stay healthy and help their family stay healthy. And anyway, so this whole idea that government that this big effort could be initiated by organizations, not even government per se, but like a trade or by a company, whatever. But anyway, but the idea that government somehow stands behind this effort, that this attracts the right wing, the psychology, it tweaks in the right wing a reaction that this is either an opportunity. The more sociopathic people say this is an opportunity to mobilize these other paranoid people, even though I'm vaccinated. This is a Tucker Carlson kind of thing, or at Fox News, that look, there are all these rubes that that I can get lathered up about this particular thing, and so I can get them going about it, so I can get them on my issues, which is either achieving power accumulating money from them, some combination thereof, getting power, grabbing power. And this is where Pat King and other organizers of this rally, or this convoy, that they spill the beans. They're about grabbing power for reasons that are not clear from Justin Trudeau. I mean, again, Justin Trudeau's not my ideal Prime Minister of Canada. I would prefer Jagmeet Singh of the NPD to be Prime Minister, for instance. And but just as a maybe 1,000 people or a few hundred people in a demonstration, it's the again the megalomaniacal idea, the grandiose idea that one could just that this small group with their far right extremist ideas that are unpopular could grab power and could change who the prime minister is by in this case by killing him, okay, by talking about violence. This is part of this fantasy, the fascist fantasy world that is recognizable in MAGA world, in the trumpet in the United States, and also we see this in Canada as well. And there's a great resonance between those two groups, and this is why the excitement about this group. And I want to point out, this is something I tweeted about, I think it was yesterday, that basically, there are some leftists who, there's this phenomenon of this sort of left-right, which in a previous episode on Politics 2100, I talked about how there's this sort of people who are formerly of the left or who have some credentials on the left who during the Trump administration drifted to the right, or think of themselves as an ultra left, but then becomes an ultra left or right. It starts to shade off into the right wing. And Jimmy Dore is one of these people, and he had on his show Richard Wolff, who is a University, UMass Amherst economics professor and one of the few tenured Marxist professors in the United States, or in economics. I think he's probably the only one, or maybe there's one other. But so a Marxist economist who also appears fairly often on various left, or not just left programs. He sometimes appears as sort of kind of a economist who is concerned about working people and so forth and so on. But anyway, he fell for the idea that this protest was a working class expression of working class discontent, and in the context of this interview with Jimmy Dore, and that's troubling, and that shows a real lack of judgment on his part, and how the far right has been able to change its stripes in some ways or another, or to keep changing its appearance to people, especially in the last 10 years, or 7 or 8 years, let's say, and to create confusion in the traditional political spectrum about who is left and who's right, and to kind of to snooker, to trick people, including Richard Wolff in this case, to think that they are of the left or representative of the working class, when, I mean, he didn't, I don't know if he thought it through. How do these people have control of several $100,000, maybe $500,000 piece of equipment, 400, 500, something like that, 300, for weeks on end, and be, salt of the earth workers, and also be able to operate it. This gas guzzle, I mean, it takes diesel guzzling machines. It takes hundreds of dollars a day to run them, at least if you're driving them, and even to have them in the sub-zero weather. They need to run. You need to run the engines to keep the heat on, and so forth and so on. And if you're using them as disruptive to honk the horns, like they were doing in Ottawa, and so forth and so on. So at least it's an expensive proposition to run the machines and maintain them. So this is all something that you don't expect from someone who's a truck driver who is a contract who's struggling to either pay off the truck, and the typical logistics workers are overworked, and they're focused more on bread and butter issues that Richard Wolff ordinarily is pretty sharp about. So anyway, so this is an example of how the far right has been able to trick people and to show, to create the pseudo populist, and to be able to shed some of the image of the kind of creepy Nazi that we had maybe in the 1960s and 70s, the sort of the sort of freaks in a way that they were viewed as at that point in time, and that has been shed to some degree, and that they've been able to create a series of vehicles. Let's say, I'm using vehicles in the abstract sense of the word, covers or masks, let's say, over their identity, their right-wing identity, their far-right ideologies, to create destructive, to do politics, to create destructive events, basically to try to gain power, to try to grab power, and then with the idea of also using that power destructively, divisively, in a way that is not about fostering human development and human growth, not preserving our common home, our common ecosphere at all. In fact, denying that that's even something that they should be concerned about. And anyway, so this is why I think that the BS meter, like as I say in the title, of the left and of the media has been fooled, and they need to get better at spotting this if they really care about preserving democracy in North America. Okay, so anyway, I'll stop here. I'll probably return to this at some other point in time in another episode. So if you have thoughts about this particular topic, either the general topic of the right wing being able to camouflage itself, or just more about the convoys, Canadian convoys, please place your comments below, and also please like the video if you liked it, and please subscribe to this channel if you're enjoying Politics 2100, and I'll see you in the next video.